In this next unit, I'm going to show you how you can make your own silicone molds. So this isn't a requirement if you want to be a candle maker, but it's just some handy knowledge to know if you ever want to make a particular custom candle, but you can't find any silicone molds for that item. So I'm going to be molding a chocolate chip cookie to show you how you can mold a food item, and then I'm also going to be making my own crystal mold because I'm going to be using that in our next unit for the crystal candle. So because I couldn't find either of these particular molds online, I'm just going to make them myself, and you'll be surprised about how simple it is to do. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using a real cookie because I want to have a cookie shaped mold. Now you can use anything that you like as long as it is something that will be able to have silicone poured over it and still hold its shape. So this cookie will still stay the exact same way, and the silicone will pick up all of those details, and I'm going to get a really realistic cookie mold because it is being molded from an actual cookie. Now obviously this cookie is not going to be edible after I mold it, but it will give me a really cool and really realistic mold, which is going to help a lot with candle making. Especially if you are after a particular item, it means that you know how to make your own molds and you can do really custom themed candles. Now with this, we're going to need to be able to have some sort of dam or barrier that the silicone just won't pour all over the table. I can't just mix up silicone and pour it directly on top. So what I need to do is have some sort of container to hold that silicone into place. I'm going to be using a takeaway container. You could also build a little one out of any sort of thing to hold it in, like cardboard, because you can then just break it apart after you're finished. So I found this takeaway container that is pretty much the perfect size for my cookie. You want to have a container that has about 1 centimeter around the outside of the item that you are molding. If you have something too big, you're going to be using up a lot of silicone and it's not going to be cost effective. So you want to find something that gives you enough space around it that when you do pull it out, it's got a nice thick wall to it, so you're not going to have your mold break apart really easily. But you also want to have something that's not too big because then you're going to be using extra silicone. Now before I do mix up my silicone, I need to prep this, and I'm going to be doing that by adding a little bit of glue to the bottom of my cookie to make sure it stays in place, because sometimes when you do pour, especially if you are molding a lighter item, when you do pour your full amount of silicone over the top, you might find that it will either float up or it might go off center or go up on one side when the silicone does go underneath it, because the silicone is going to be denser than this cookie. So by just gluing it into place, it just means that that cookie is going nowhere. You can use whatever glue you want to use. So I've just put a little bit of the Gorilla Glue down, and now I'm just going to place it into the center of my mold and just press that down. Just like that. And now that cookie is locked into place. Now this is a vital step to do if you want your silicone to come out really easily, and that is mold release. So you just want to spray it over the complete surface where you will be pouring your silicone, and it just makes this so much easier when it does come to release that silicone. The silicone that I'm using today is from Barnes and it's called Pinky Seal. It comes in 2 parts. So one part is your silicone and one part is your hardener, and when you mix them together, that's what causes the silicone to harden. So you'll always find that silicone is sold in 2 parts, and now you can use whatever brand you like. I just preferably prefer the Barnes Pinky Seal because I find it really easy to work with. It's just a 1-to-1 ratio and you measure it by volume. So I'm just going to grab my measuring cup. Now this measuring cup is just for my silicone, just because I don't want any cross-contamination. So I do try to have cups that are just for wax, that are just for silicone, that are just for, like, you know, anything else, just because it prevents cross-contamination. Now this old silicone, once it dries, it just peels straight out and you can keep reusing the cup. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit in the cup once you do start pouring out, because it will just blend it in with the other silicone. It doesn't matter which part gets poured first, as long as you have equal amounts of both and they both properly combine. So the reason why I like the Pinky Seal is because one part is white and one part is pink. You really see when both parts are combined. So I'm going to be pouring 50 and 50 to have 100 mils in total. One of the reasons why I like working with the pinky seal is because it's really easy to tell when both parts are combined, because one part is white and one part is pink, and you'll really be able to see because you'll lose all of that white and the pink will go a little bit more pastel-y. When you do work with silicone, please note that you have a very short working time before it does start to set. So if you are doing a bigger piece, you might need to do multiple pours because you won't be able to mix up a big batch before it is setting. So as soon as I can see it has combined and I can't see any more white, I'm then going to just pour it straight over the top of my cookie. Now don't be too concerned about if you do have any air bubbles. Most of the time they will just pop, but because this is going to be the bottom of my mold, it's not a big deal. But you can just go blow on them and they will pop, or you can use your heat gun just on the air setting, turn the heat off, and it will pop all of them. And now I'm going to wait about half an hour before this will be ready to be popped out of the mold. For the next tutorial that I'm going to show you, I'm going to be showing you how you can make a crystal candle. And basically this crystal candle is going to look like a geode that has been cut in half. But because I want to make this as realistic as possible, I need to have a rough outside to my candle to mimic that rock. And I cannot find, obviously, a geode-shaped mold that's going to suit, so I'm going to make my own. I'm using just a small takeaway cup. You can use whatever size you want. You can get bigger bowls if you want. But this is just basically to make a mold for me to pour my wax into to mimic the outside of a geode. So I've got my cup and I'm going to use some aluminium foil or aluminum foil, depending on which part of the world you are in. So I've just crushed up my aluminium foil and now I'm going to cover my cup with that, and this is going to create a really rough surface and look like a rock face. So on the bottom, I'm just going to flatten this out because this is going to be the bottom of my candle, and I do want it to have a flat base so that way the candle sits nicely. So I just did all the exact same steps that I've previously shown you. This time I'm just using a Tupperware container that's old because it's a really nice size, and I'm going to be doing this in 2 pours. So I've done the first pour just because it will take more silicone and it just is a lot easier to work with if I do 2 pours instead of trying to mix up a big batch of silicone. And then I'm just going to wait for this to set, so in about half an hour time I'm going to mix up another batch and pour that on top, and then that will fully encase my bowl.